Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's exciting edition of Victory Never Sleeps. I will hopefully be joined by our law speaker, Alan Turnage, here at some point. But until then, thank you to all the amazing people out at Thorshoff. My family and I attended Sigerbloat at Thorshoff, and it was fantastic. It was great to get an opportunity to be in that amazing Hoff and to be around some wonderful people there. This weekend here at Sigerheim in Jackson County, Tennessee, we will be celebrating Sigerbloat as well. So thanks everybody who helped put that on and make that happen. A reminder, or kind of a letting folks know, it is my family's plan to be up at Freyshoff for Freyfaxi on the coming up here in August. So anybody who would like to come up to Freyfaxi at Freyshoff in Austintown, Ohio, we would love to see you guys there. It's a great opportunity to see our Freyshoff district folks. So I look forward to seeing folks there. Some top of the show things for people. At long last, in the AFA store, we now have physical copies of the Asatru True Lug Ball. I know I talk about it and reference the show a lot. Anybody can take a look at it at the link on our website. But at runestone.org/store, people can get physical copies, so you can have them there as an easy reference or share them with your friends or whatever, you cut them up and make art projects out of them, whatever you guys would like to do with them. But yeah, those are available at runestone.org. Also, top of the show things, as is our custom, pavilion stuff. How we coming on that? Doing good. We have raised over $10,000 so far on the pavilion, which is fantastic. Got a little ways to go. It looks like that's at 28.9%. Appreciate everybody's generosity. You guys are amazing. And then at paying off Freyshoff. So paying off Freyshoff, we are 45.3% done paying that off. That's again after having dedicated that on the 6th of December in 2025. So tremendous progress in a very short amount of time. And just kind of as a note, paying off Freyshoff is one of those prerequisites before we can get started in earnest on constructing Tiershoff. So we appreciate everybody who has donated and contributed to any of those things. Feel free to, if you can, if you're so inclined, runestone.org/donate, and you can donate to any of our fundraisers there. And like I said, we appreciate you guys. On that note, Gilbert started off our show with a $150 donation towards our memorial fund. We have the ability now to one of our fallen members that I mentioned on the program, Melinda Harris. We are trying to raise money to handle the cremation expenses and interment expenses for making sure her remains wind up where she wanted them, which will be in our cemetery at Odenshoff for our people to share with and have with us and in our spiritual community from now until forever. So we're very excited about that broke in our favor in a way that we could provide her what she wanted. And we appreciate everybody who's donated to help make that happen. You guys are awesome. And I think we're just about halfway to our goal on that one. Appreciate everybody joining us in the chat room tonight. I am trying to kill time just briefly because expecting our law speaker on, so I'm not sure what the holdup is there. Hopefully Nick is reaching out on the back end and we can get everything all squared away the way we would like. don't want to steal his thunder, but the idea tonight is to talk about community. And if he doesn't pop on, I think we may dive right in on that here in a few. Oh, what I will note, something is in the air. We have had a little surge of membership applications over this last week, which has been beautiful to see. We're always very excited when our folk come home. Something that I have noticed in my time doing this, we talk on the program a lot. I know I mention on here a lot. Cores to some of our magic practice are recognizing currents in the web of earth. And a lot of times that sounds figurative, but it's strange, it's weird in the very best sense, how that does end up playing out in a strange way. Whenever we get surge of members, I try to look and I try to see, is there a commonality? Are these people all coming from one area? Do they know each other in their reason for joining or how they found us? Is there something in common or some kind of catalyst to get a bunch of people to join at once? And seldom can I find that. Every now and again that happens, but more often than not, we get these surges because something's in the air and something strikes in a way that is unknowable to us, but a number of people get that pull to come home and to do so at the same time. So that's always a really cool thing to see. So, kind of last thing that I want to, all right. So one of the things that we often mention on the program is the communal nature of our faith. Asatru is something that is so thinking on how I want to put this. There are, as you guys may can tell, I'm flailing a little bit because I'm starting fresh, and I know the law speaker has an outline that he wanted to discuss tonight. But I guess something I'd like to say is in modern discussion about religion and spirituality, there are a lot of people that define themselves as spiritual, and their expression of their faith or their practice of what that means to them is often a very personal thing. It's their personal between them and the gods, or them and their one God, or whatever, however they define themselves in their faith. It's very much a them and the divine relationship. And there's certainly a place for that in Asatru. But what is very, very prominent in Asatru is the relationship of one to the divine through the lens and in the context of community. And more than that, the relationship of a community of people to the gods. It fills out and it adds context to our faith. Community is the medium through which we express all of our noble virtues and put into practice the things that we value. Through our interactions with our community, we're able to demonstrate our character and show our deeds in a way that's recognized and a value is placed to them. I got word that our law speaker is on the way here in a few minutes, so I'll put a pin in the community bit for a second and hope that he joins us before I dive right back into it. But I want you to keep those things in mind. Community is the context that our deeds and our values play out. Community is the medium by which we're able to express those things, fundamental values in Asatru. We have one question so far. As a veteran, is there any way that the government can help with the cremation costs for Melinda? So, no, to my understanding, as far as the cremation goes, but as a veteran, she is entitled to her grave marker. So her tombstone will be provided, as I understand, through I think through the Veterans Administration or however they do that. But yes, as a veteran, her grave marker is something they help with. But the actual cremation and transport of her remains, I don't believe so. So that's where we're at with our conversation with the mortuary facility. But we are engaging that, and they are interfacing with the Veterans Administration and getting that all sorted out. And this is the figures that they quoted us. And if we can shave anything off, we'll definitely reflect that in that thermometer as we go. Here he is. He exists.
In a different time zone.
In fact, in a different time zone. Welcome. I hopefully primed them, and they are oozing with anticipation at this point. So they're ready for you.
Okay. So we'll just jump right into it, eh? So I apologize for my tardiness. No disrespect. It's been kind of a chaotic couple of weeks, and so I am behind on several things. So community, right? First of all, I want to review a couple things, as I often do. I'm listening to another book about diet, and it just reminded me about, again, I know we've talked about it a couple of times, but I find it really, it just emphasized the importance of eating well, eating in synchronization, and even, timing timing your meals so that you're, 3 or 4 hours before bedtimes when you finish eating. And there was something else. I left my notes at the office. So anyway, so community, in thinking about that, the one thing that I wanted to emphasize, or one of the things I wanted to emphasize, is taking advantage of the HOFs that we have. It has been a lot of work getting us up to this stage. I know it seems it seems inconvenient when a HOF is 2 or 3 hours away from you, but trust me, it has been a great deal of effort, of love, mostly with Matt, but I helped to get us up to this stage of the game with the HOFs that we have. And it is, we are building HOF cultures around all of our locations. We have a good, strong community at Njord's HOF, Thor's HOF the same, Odin's HOF, I'm sure, where there's, where we have groups that come in and are regulars there at the HOF, and, you get to know each other. You get to know each other's personalities and troubles and joys and all that sort of stuff. So it makes the practice of Asatru, a happier thing, instead of sitting at home wondering if you're the only one, because if you're sitting at home by yourself, you are the only one. But if you come to the HOF, then you can be around a bunch of like-minded people that share your assumptions about the way the world works. We are traditionalist-minded people that believe in the natural order of things, in a hierarchical existence that is run in a hierarchical structure, in keeping with nature and 300,000 years of cultural evolution. So we certainly believe that that Western civilization manifested in its way the way that it has because of the cultural influence of the Germanic tribal peoples. So that despite the overlay of Christianity, the bedrock community aspects of Western culture are those that it inherited from its pagan past. So the Odinic structure that lies beneath the Christian overlay is what gives Western civilization all of its best features. And there are 1,000 examples of that, of course. So the other thing about Asatru community is that when you join the Asatru Folk Assembly, obviously you get to take advantage of the member chats, and that is an important means of shaping and expanding your understanding, not only of the lore and the beliefs and practice of our folk, but also the zeitgeist, the world spirit that we manifest as we track our way through the world. The way that we approach things is not necessarily cast in stone in that way, but it is. But I was actually listening to a podcast about theurgy, of all things, and what they talked about when you have those bedrock principles, it doesn't necessarily solve every problem, but what it does is it gives you a firm stance from which to analyze all these issues, so that you can come at a problem in a rational way that takes into account the right understanding of the world. And of course, that applies not only in in family and social situations, but writ larger into the political stuff. And we don't talk a lot of politics on here, and there are reasons for that. But the analysis of it, and you can come to many conclusions as long as you're approaching it through the right way. And I think a lot of these political ideologies are, as they say, downstream of culture. So when you have your culture right, if we can fix the culture, and that's what we are trying to do, certainly within the AFA, if we can figure out a way to put Matt in charge, we could get a lot of the rest of this stuff straightened out too. So there is that. You get the understanding of people who have been at this for a while. That includes me. There are lots of others who have been doing it just as long or longer. And you can, if you hang around in the chats, if you come to the Hoff more especially, then you can get then you can share knowledge and wisdom and understanding with us, and we can deepen our understanding by approaching problems that we in new ways that we hadn't thought of before. In addition to that, the other important aspect of community, it seems to me, is the community that we share with the ancestors and ultimately with the gods. We are all one folk. Odin as the progenitor, and all of our culture and folk are descended from that beginning. And so, if you read books of history, I mean, even the early English kings, for example, trace their lineage back to Odin. They were ostensibly Christian in their practice because that's what you had to do. But in the early days, they were certainly much more aware of the fact that their actual culture, their pride and lineage tracked its way back to their own gods and to their own understanding of the world. So through the ancestors and the veneration of the ancestors to their rightful place among the gods, through the Desir, that is all part of the community that we share. By coming to the Hof and by actually going to moots that your folk builders sponsor, you can meet people in your local group. They don't have to be your best friend, but you can. And actually, I think that's one of the things that has gone wrong with society in general, America in particular. We've gotten so particularized about, we don't want to be around somebody unless they match up with us 88%. But, in point of fact, people with larger friend groups that maybe match less well overall, but they have that have like a less complete overlay. If you have a bunch of people that are 50-60% of the way there, then between all of you, you get, it all works and it all happens. And that's the kind of group that you can build by bloating together, by going to moots and having dinner and riding bikes and kayaking. You build common interest and common stories. And those are the kinds of things that by sharing community, it makes you a happier person. The, wealth that we've created in this country is one thing, and it's marvelous. But we'd really be better off having less stuff and having more friends, even though it means driving a couple hours, but if you think about it, a couple hours used to mean barely being able to get out of sight of your house, to hitch up a team and go to go to a big county fair or something like that was a big deal that didn't happen very often. We have the opportunity now with modern transportation that we can we can avail ourselves of these functions of community, and we should. So that's the starting point.
Nick, put up the thing.
Pardon?
Ta-da! All right, so I just think this is an apropos for our theme today. I have them all 47.
Nice.
I was young once, walked alone, and bewildered seemed in the way. Then I found me another, and rich, I thought me, for man is the joy of man. And I think this rings true. I think it rang true in the Viking Age. I think it rang true in the Neolithic period. I think it will always ring true. Humans are social creatures. We are built and formed to interact in groups and to interact with one another. I kind of primed the discussion a little bit with the fact that that interaction is it's the context that we express our values. You can't express hospitality by yourself. You can't, it's not, there are, I guess you in the woods can do courageous things, but so much of the virtue of courage is others recognizing it and celebrating it, and you being part of celebrating it when you see it in others. One of the terms that I think is very often misunderstood in a modern context is honor. Honor was never intended to mean like your personal code of doing stuff. That's awesome, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's a very admirable thing. But honor was the value that your community placed upon you. honors were bestowed upon you by recognized representatives of your tribe and your people and important personages in your orbit. And we still see that in some things when there's a civic award given or something. But honor it wasn't your self-value. It was the value placed upon you by your community. We have become very, very atomized in the world around us. And as individuals, many of us have had to break from groups and institutions we were once part of that weren't fulfilling and that we learned not to be the right thing. There's been an overcorrection to where so many of us have trouble getting along with others, have trouble being part of something, have trouble fitting into their place in a hierarchy. We have a hyper focus on individualism, and we have a lacking focus on group function. Alan pointed something out that I think is worth noting. Hopefully you guys all see when we post the various pictures of AFA gatherings. And man, that just looks like some people sitting around eating dinner. Quite often it is. But that sharing of food with your folk, with your spiritual community, is a religious act. Building bonds, building frith, building trust between you and your fellow Asatru and your fellow AFA members. That's what this is, it's a big part of what this is about. I would say ritually, what we do in Bloat and in Sumble is very significantly ingrained in community practice. It's not one guy and the gods. It's a circle of worshipers together worshiping the gods. It's a gathering of our folk raising toasts to the gods, to ancestors, and to one another. Community is at the very core of this, and it always has been. But I think all too often that is common sense. It's what happens, but it's not spoken about as much. And so sometimes I don't think it gets the emphasis that it ought to get. Alan, you're muted, and I first was telling you about it as I was muted.
Sorry. One of the most severe punishments that could be exacted on a wrongdoer was banishment. So like the very worst thing that could happen to you, I guess worse than, unless short of being blood eagled, which probably never happened, but to be turned away from your community. So the mindset of certainly those who wielded justice absolutely was like the most important thing to people is the people that you know, and the people who have your back, and the people who know you and respect you, and to be excluded from that community of friends and loved ones was a harsh punishment, almost beyond thinking. But the atomization of modern culture has just put us in a totally different mindset. Like we can just go find some different friends that do some different stuff. But the friend group that I found in the AFA, and I think that most of us find, is a diverse group in the proper sense of that term. We have a lot of experience in a lot of different areas, and are able to share those experiences and share those stories with a common understanding of what the proper meaning and context of all this sort of stuff is in our culture.
So you mentioned justice, and I think that it's not one of the things that's front and center when we talk about the faith of Asatru, but community is again highly, highly reflected in our understanding of want to say justice, but I guess when I say legal law and when I say like criminal justice, it puts it in a real modern context. But as a person in relation to society justice concept, we often hear debt to society, but that doesn't really mean much in its current implication, but it meant everything to our ancestors. The understanding of crime and how to right those kind of wrongs was fundamentally about repaying the damage to social fabric that you cause. It wasn't about locking somebody up or doing something punitive necessarily, sometimes, but those had community implications. It was very much about what damage have you caused to the community. What, by doing something harmful to one of my family members, you have made us weaker. You have made my clan and my house weaker. You have put a hole in what was known as the kin fence. Everything was an understanding of community, of place in that community, and of value in that community. I think that with so many things, we have a very disposable culture today, as Alan mentioned. If you do wrong by one set of friends, you can pretend they don't exist, or you can go move somewhere and, have a bunch of new friends. But I think the more you do that, the less intimate those friendships, the less enduring those friendships are. And I think that when we look at many of us, there is a decreasing, as the generations progress, number of lifelong friendships or lifelong connections that our people end up having. And some of that's a consequence of just the circumstances we all live in. But so much of it is because it is easier to flee discomfort than it is to fix damage that one's done in the eyes of your community. I think that factors into Asatru in many, many ways.
And the other part of it, and again, I don't use this word a lot, but we have to also be tolerant of the errors of our friends and the mistakes that they make, as long as although it took me a long time to get here, but it certainly is the idea that as long as people are acting in good faith, like if you may do something wrong, but if it doesn't start with thought crime, like if somebody makes a mistake, it's one thing. But if somebody's does something to intentionally wrong you, that puts them in a very different place and posture of the their relationship to you and the kind of friend that they are, the kind of person that you can subsequently know that they are. I think it's also true, talking about community. First of all, America's a complicated place in many ways. And part of the reason that we've ended up in this crazy posture is exactly because of the diversity that's been forced into our neighborhoods. 50 years ago, 60 years ago, when I was growing up, people bought a house and stayed there. My mother and father, bought a house in 1968, and we still have it. That's where I grew up, spent my whole childhood there from age 7 on. But, and most of the neighbors are still around there. And that's not, so this portability that we have, and I realize it's part of the American mosaic that we think we can always move on to greener pastures, but what we've lost in return for that marginal increase in wealth or status that we get from skipping around through the neighborhoods is drastically worse than what we've lost. We've given up these lifelong friendships and the idea of permanence and settled, the ability to be comfortable, around your own neighbors because you've known them for a long period of time. I think it's also true of, again, relating to Hoff culture and people that you bloat and moot with, you can be comfortable around them. And it is, as those of us who hold opinions that are not welcome necessarily by the mainstream in a lot of places, it's a good thing to be able to let your guard down a little bit and talk about things with people of understanding, with people of right understanding, who grasp what these things are. And trust me, it's worth it to drive a couple, 3 hours each way, get a hotel, spend the night. It's worth it. It's worth it 1,000 times over. I think the other thing that we should address while we're talking about community is the idea of the community at large, our civic community. Most of us are certainly in many places, like for many of your friends, you're the only Odinist that they know. And certainly for most strangers, even it frustrates me how many guys I have run into wearing a hammer or who recognize my hammer, and I try to invite them to stuff and try to get them to get involved and give them a card with the runestone URL on it, and you just never hear from them. And it's frustrating. I don't know what the cause of that is. But in the greater civic community, we should all be more active. I'm talking to myself as much as anybody, in trying to shape the communities that we live in. And it's bigger things like, and I don't even live in the city, so I can't go to city council meetings anymore. I guess go to county commission meetings. But getting involved in that sort of thing, and also, being generally polite to people and, putting your cart back when you are grocery shopping, being a good citizen also plays into the idea of community in the larger sense of the word. What we have to be, especially at this stage in the development of our faith, we have to be examples of honor and integrity and responsibility so that people will see us and want to emulate who we are and what we do.
Ideally, I'd like that to be a commonality and a marker that people can recognize about us. It's one of the things I will say very, very positively about Latter-day Saints. Growing up in my high school, we did not have a huge Mormon community. But the Mormon kids in my school were the best at all the things. They were academically high achievers. They were athletically high achievers. They were good-looking kids that were in shape, that took care of themselves, that were respectful of other students, respectful of the teachers. You could, as a brand thing, the Latter-day Saints were top-notch folks in the community I grew up in, and all of that spoke volumes about that being something positive without them having to open their mouth and tell me about Joseph Smith. Those nonverbal communications go a long way, and Alan's point's very well taken. You may be their only point of reference to what Asatru is or what Asatru are like. By you being the example, and again, wearing your hammer out so they know what that is, and associating that with somebody who is dignified and a good member of community, and something they want, the kind of guy they want to be or to be friends with, or they want their sisters or daughters to find themselves with. That's what you want. That's the kind of thing you want to. I ran into this with Aubrey the other day, and I was talking about it. It's always such a nice thing when other parents come up to you and compliment you on how well behaved your child is. I think that is informative to this discussion. It's always a great thing when you hear about, I don't know much about Asatru, but I know this one Asatru guy. That guy was great. They're doing something right. That's invaluable. And I have to think how much more so for the gods to recognize, like, wow, people think that our followers are somebody special. I talk all the time in ritual, and I think it's really important. We want our gods to be proud of us. We want our families to be proud of us. A big part of that is by being the example and living the things that we talk about, instead of just making cool Viking memes about them, but living out our values in the world. It's one of those things with the food pantries. They're a big effort on our part to be part of our local community and to show our best face, our hospitality, our generosity in those communities, to be recognized as a positive force to have in your area and a source of good things in your community. So far, that's worked out very, very well for us. And it's something that I'm really proud that we're doing.
Yeah, that has been awesome. And I know at Nordhoff, like one of the guys who's a regular there at the food bank picking up food, I mean, he gave us 2 wild boars that he killed. So now we have meat for a while, and it's and some of the other regulars there at the community, as you know, I mean, I think you've seen some of the pottery that the one guy has made for us, and very much with the Nordhoff motif, and so he gets he gets what it is that we're trying to do there. I mean, it even had some of it has the marlin on it that that is the Nordhoff symbol. And Thor's replete with Thor's hammers and that sort of thing. Another lady has brought us. She made little like lays, but just out of cloth. So she brought some of those for us to wear one time. So and I ask those people that are eligible for membership. I suggest to them, you ought to check us out, and you should be here. You should be here, and so far no takers, but you never know. I think the other part of that same thing, and another aspect of community, if you want more of your friends to be there, invite them. I mean, I've invited a good friend of mine who is non-religious, but he came, enjoyed it, found lots of good folk that he could have common interest with. He's almost as conservative as we are, and so he found a good cadre of friends that he could discuss things with in a good spirit. And he hadn't been back, but he will. So and again, so that's because we enjoy it, because we know that we are on the right path spiritually and culturally. We should all be inviting more of our culture of our circle of friends to join us at the Hoff.
So we should be good people with everybody we interact with, and we should always make the best impression. We should do that because we are Aryan and we should be noble. But outside just that, it is very practical towards showing how special and beneficial this is that we're part of, and helping to bring our folk home. And it's like so many things these days, one of the unique features, we all have these different web of people that we know, and that web transcends age, oftentimes it transcends location. We all have friends, and through the internet and everything else, we have friends all over the place. If you're talking to somebody and they're not interested or not eligible or not religious or whatever their thing is, maybe their roommate is, maybe their friend is, maybe their parents are, maybe the next guy they meet when they go down the road, man, you know what just happened to me? I was over at that Hoff, and man, them honkies some good folks. Cool. What's that about? I'll check it out next time I drive by. Those things, and as silly as that sounds, those things do happen. Those things happen all the time. Planting seeds by having a good reputation is fundamental. And it's something that our ancestors surely knew. Reputation is so very fundamental to what we do for those kind of reasons. But in this day and age where the word spreads fast on a lot of things, we can really make a good impression that affects people, states away and brings the folk home. You may not always see it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. I talked at the beginning of the excuse me, at the beginning of the broadcast about we have a little surge in membership going on. And how I never can figure out what the X factor is. I always look for, man, are these people all in the same area, or do they have the same reason for joining, or, what caused this all to happen? And it's always very elusive. But oftentimes it's because of things like this. They may not put it in the reason for joining, but sometimes they do. Hey, I knew a guy one time that said they were an AFA member and they were really cool. Now that I've got, whatever in my life, I wanted to check that out. We have that happen. We have it happen frequently. So those things do matter.
And I think the LDS or Mormon example is spot on. I was watching a documentary about this lady who was a counselor for Mormon families, and she developed this little niche specialty in counseling AFA marital problems. She turned out to be quite a wrongdoer in the long run, but you're exactly right. Like all those, all the families that they interviewed, were in good condition, doing well financially, and I think that they have. Although, of course, the genesis of that, the right word for them, the genesis of that for them was, that they got whipped out of town until they just really had no choice but to circle up and help each other out. Otherwise, they weren't going to make it through the Utah. They just weren't going to make it through the next winter. So they developed a culture out of necessity, a culture of assisting each other and holding each other to a higher standard. I think a lot of times we are worried about, and rightly so, perhaps we're worried about being too hard on each other. But at the same time, we should look to each other to meet the standard that we expect of ourselves and of each other.
And that's something that as we build culture over time, will get better. It is difficult because I think we're all, especially the younger generations coming up, but I'd say most people now in the West have a fragileness for plain speaking. There is a line between being straightforward and being rude. And a lot of people, on both sides of that, misunderstand the one for the other. But I think we're very quick to take offense, and because we don't place strong enough value on community, those are the kind of things that we're very quick to hide from rather than address and rise to the occasion. Lesson I learned, unfortunately by negative example on it, but from my mom. I watched growing up, and she had this friend, this friend group of other I don't know if you would call them liberal white ladies now, but you certainly would back in the 80s and 90s. Teacher friends, and their friendship was always very work oriented. And man, the slightest dose of honesty about something that bothered one of them, or something that, hey, you did this thing and I need you not to do that again. And they would sever ties, and you'd never talk to that person again. And I watched her really suffer a drought of friends over the years, because those friendships couldn't endure any kind of straight talk or honest reflection to one another. And that's unfortunate. And I've seen that up front, and I think that we do well to steel ourselves against hypersensitivity and be willing to not only speak plainly, or not only be able to hear plain speaking about ourselves amongst friends, but be able to give that back in appropriate measure to where we can all be made better and not have that artificial barrier of hypersensitivity there.
You're certainly right that, that there's a line between honesty and rudeness. You can be direct without being rude. But you have to hear it in that way too. Honest, constructive criticism is not meant to hurt your feelings. It's meant to, improve your position, and to, so that you don't continue to engage in that inappropriate behavior or activity, or, so you get the spinach out from in between your teeth. I mean, at that stage of the game, you should be able, and again, it's a function of what used to be called helicopter parenting, which I now understand is, devolved further into snowplow parenting, if you know what that is. It's snowplow parenting is where the parents go and clear every obstacle out of the way, so the child gets like the red carpet ride all the way through to the participation trophy. But it's and I realize that, that this whole approach seems anachronistic. It seems like we're out of touch, but really it's the rest of the civilization, the rest of the world is what's out of touch. The fact that people certainly can't take a joke, much less hear an honest criticism about themselves, is disheartening in a lot of ways. And, I've come to expect it in the outside world, like for the rest of the planet, the people who are not us, I treat them all with kid gloves. But at the same time, I tell people who are my friends, if I speak to you directly, it's because I like you. If I am being hyper polite and dancing around something, it's because I know you can't handle the truth, as Jack Nicholson said.
So that brings me to something, but before I do, Andrew in Texas, thank you. He donated $10 towards Melinda's cremation and memorial funds. So thank you for that. We appreciate you. Appreciate all our generous givers on the program. Something Alan brings up that I think is very, appropriate to talk about in the discussion community is Innengard and Utgard. So Alan kind of had a dichotomy there of randos that he meets at the gas station. You have a different rules of engagement and a different posture towards. You still want to be dignified and noble too, but there is a proprietary relationship in your inner yard of people who are your friends or who are part of your AFA family. When I say welcome to our AFA family on the little welcome emails, it's not like branding or hyperbolic. I believe that wholeheartedly, and I feel that way. When you become part of this, you become part of a family of faith. And as such, I think that we owe each other a certain amount of grace of, and this is, I am aware, this is much, much easier said than done. And I think we all fall short of it sometimes. But I challenge, I do this with leadership from time to time, and I believe in it. I challenge folks to extend everybody, when in doubt, extend them the courtesy of interpreting what they're saying or what they're typing to you in the best possible tone with the best possible intention. We know for a fact that that is not always the case, but until you know for sure, until you know for reasonably sure, it is a good social kindness to be able to expend the what if. Let's just assume that he means that in the nicest possible way, and let's act as though that's the case. I think that if we all did that with one another, we would all have an easier time in life. And I think a lot of our friends might still be with us as friends. I think we would have much more enduring relationships if we actively tried to extend that courtesy to one another. And I think that, if you mess up and you let something slide by assuming it was meant in the best possible way, I think that's a minimal cost for a beneficial effect over time.
And when you are getting that email about being part of the family, don't be that loser cousin who only comes around once in every 5th year's family reunion. Get off your butt and do stuff.
So since you did that, Alan kind of went on a thing about coming to the Hoffs. So a little bit over a week ago, I turned 45 years old. And it may not seem like much to some people, but to other people, it entitles me to like doing some old man things. So back in my day, I remember the dream of one day having a Hoff. Like, man, one of these days, maybe if we got all our ducks in a row, we could have a Hoff, and how awesome that would be. And I've been fortunate enough to live in a time where that happened. And that was amazing when we just had that one Hoff out there in Brownsville, California, Odin's Hoff. And that gave the opportunity for all of our people to come together at a Hoff and worship our gods and fellowship with their AFA family in one place. And that was so special. And, you have people to this day that will travel, maybe once, maybe twice, maybe 3 or 4 times a year. They'll travel, 8 or 10 hours to go to that Hoff. Got a lot of other people that monthly will travel, let's say, past 3 hours is a lot, but we have people that will travel 4 hours a month to go to their local Hoff. And I don't hear those people complain about it. I know that it's a lot, but all those people are very fulfilled. It's worth doing. And we live in a time now where we have 5 Hoffs. There is a very good odds that there is a Hoff somewhere near you that you can attend. And I would encourage you in the strongest possible terms to make that a priority to attend your Hoff. If it's very, very far away, maybe you can only make it a couple of times a year. If it's more reasonable, hopefully you can make it once a month. It is always going to be worth the effort. And it is amazing that we live as close to Hoffs as we do. And if we have enough participation, and if our gods favor us, we'll have more Hoffs in the future. And every one we get, it'll be that much closer. But that only happens if the people we have now are willing to make that effort to get to the Hoffs we have. More than that, you have members near you that host gatherings, that host dinners, that go hiking, that go kayaking, that go have a board game night, that get together and have a beer, that do things together. You have that all over the place, and you may not know about it unless you actively engage. We got a couple of tools for that, though. The AFA calendar at runestone.org, calendar or /calendar. There is a calendar that's got all these events on it, of all the stuff we do. Chances are you're going to find your state on there. You're going to find something close enough to you that you can be part of it. Now's the time. Be part of it. We have a rich community. Nick, do you have that other graphic I sent you from earlier? This is a graphical layout of our membership. Each one of these little pins is a member of the Asatru Folk Assembly. Now, we have international members and we have folks in Alaska, but they wouldn't fit on this map in a nice and usable way. But look at how densely packed a lot of the states that we find ourselves in are. You got members close to you, and those members do things. Be part of it. Take advantage of it. This is an amazing time to be part of the Asatru Folk Assembly. Your local folk builder, or a folk builder at least, will reach out to you regularly, inviting you to these events. If you're not on the team already, now is the time. Get off the fence, get on the team. And if you are on the team, don't wait for something down the road that is more perfect. Get in the car and show up. You will be glad that you did. And I genuinely mean that. Trying to think, it's hard to think that like never has somebody been disgruntled that they'd gone to an event, but I don't hear that. I hear several times a month at least how special it was that these people traveled a great distance to be at one of our events and how much they loved it and how much they're coming back. I hear that a lot, and I want you to be the next person to hear it from. So go to your local stuff.
I 100% agree. And I'm reminded of a member who used to come to Norwich quite regularly, but has now moved to Texas. So it's a much further trek for her and her family. But she was literally in tears talking about the fact that her daughters were so relieved to know that there are other normal people in the world. That for so long they'd felt isolated in their public school system because all this leftist woke ideology is so taken hold. And it's not because they are right or even because they are in the majority. They're just the loudest, most obnoxious people in the room. So they have this idea, and certainly it's promoted by the media culture and by the corporate overlords, but conservatives, right-thinking traditionalists have been had to sit on their hands and keep their mouth shut for so long because of the fear of speaking out. But there is safety in numbers, and once we realize that we are the majority, we can start readjusting everybody else's attitude. So
I wanted to mention another thing that goes back to something you kind of opened with, but guess another couple things. And about community. One of the very beautiful things, I think this is true of our existence in general, but it's a very special manifestation of it through the Asatru Folk Assembly. We are now at a time to where we do womb blessings. We do our Asavatni, which is our baby naming ceremony. We do weddings. We do funerals. And now at each of our hofs and at Sigerheim, we inter the remains of our loved ones with their gravestones. We are very aware of our connection to each other, to the Aesir, to the ancestors that live beyond the veil and to the spirits that surround us. We have an unseen community that also permeates the world in which we occupy. And it does to a very special degree when you make note of it and you acknowledge it. And this has a lot of implications, and I may rabbit trail on this a little bit, but I think it's very relevant. When you interact with somebody with second sight who is perceptive to unseen beings, it's really interesting because I've heard it noted by people that I trust that way, that often, especially amongst us, we have people around us. When we walk into a room, when we walk from place to place, there are other folks with us in a perceptible way by those that have eyes to see and ears to hear. That's a very real thing. And we invite, so assuming that we all have our ancestors in touch with us in some way, and we all have the ability for those kind of things, if we are in a faith that rejects that and sees that as bad or impious or demonic or taboo or some kind of a no-no, there is a less than that happens there. There's a disconnect. There's a lack of harmony. There's a lack of power there. But being in a faith that embraces that worships and venerates our ancestors, that invites the spirits to be with us, to know us, to hear us, to see our actions, and to be part of the things that we're doing, we are mighty in our presence when we do things. We have ancestors and spirits that walk with us, that accompany us. We are connected to a community of our folk that goes back to the very beginning and that extends for all time. And we enthusiastically embrace our part in that community. That's really important too. Don't neglect your ancestors and those that we love that have passed on. Don't neglect bringing them in and making offerings to them and having them be part of the community. In a very particular and interesting way, and this hit me a couple of years ago when my friend Thorgren passed. Because of the maturity of the Asatru Folk Assembly, we now have two of our Gothar part of our very particular spiritual community that exists beyond the veil. That's special, and there's special implications to that. We have Gothar that serve us here in Midgard. We also have Gothar representing us beyond in a way that's closer to the Aesir, that's closer to the ancestors, and in a way that's aware of things that we're not aware of. And I think that's a tremendous boon. We have our AFA family here in Midgard, but we also have AFA family beyond the veil that we include. And it's one of the special things when we have our loved ones at each of our hofs, when we do ritual there and we ask to receive the blessings of the gods for those who are there, we always go and distribute a portion of that received blessing to our AFA family that are interred there. They're part of our gift cycle with the Aesir. They're part of our spiritual community infinitely on into the future. And that's a really special thing that we have that I don't think other people take full advantage of or fully embrace in their existence. And I know that's kind of hard to quantify, and I think maybe deliberately so, but it's very significant nonetheless.
Yeah, fully agree. And that's in the restoration of those traditions. I actually bought a book that is not has not been out for very long, but that the opening part of it has a discussion that in the tribal time, in the pre-Christian era, if that's the terminology that you want to use, people just assumed that the dead were with us still, that you sat under the watchful eye of your great-great-grandmother. And that's why you didn't want to offend people or act like a jerk, not only because you'd get your nose bloodied if your uncle was in reach, but also because you didn't want to offend the sensibilities of your grandmother by going against your proper custom.
So, Alan, do you have more things of a community nature to speak to us on at this juncture?
No, that I think I discussed the horizontal and the vertical. And that's, trying to get more people out to the Hoff, because more makes more, and if we, as things start to grow, more of us will get there, and the more people that show up, the better time will be had by all.
So that said, here on the 15th, well, let me verify. All right, yeah, here on the 15th in White Springs, Florida, they will be celebrating Freyfax. I think you can plot it on Google Maps and see how far it is. It's a pretty drive. It's a beautiful place. You guys should get in your car and go there. You guys should meet this amazing gentleman who is sharing the podcast with me, and you should celebrate Freyfax with him. But maybe that's outside of your range. Maybe it's more up your alley or closer to you to celebrate Freyfax at Freyshoff in Austintown, Ohio. It's where my family and I are going to go, and I'd love to see you guys there. And I say that I realize that I am in a different mechanic in my life with it. I understand. I am excited about driving 8 hours up there to spend the day, to drive 8 hours home, because it's awesome to go see and celebrate all my friends, all my family at Freyshoff, and to stand and bloat with them, worshiping Lord Freyr in his Hoff. It is 1,000,000% worth it. It is a long drive. I have to sit on a pillow because it hurts my butt, literally. It is a long drive there. It is a long drive back, but it's amazing. And I'm so excited that I get to do that this month, and that I got to do it, or I get to do it next month. And that here a couple days ago, I got to do it for Thorshoff. So I understand it being a distance, but I promise you it's worth it. With that, we've got some questions. From Connor. Question for Matt. As a former professional bouncer, what are your thoughts on the 3 simple rules from Roadhouse? 1, never underestimate your opponent. Okay, so I'm gonna hit each of these individually. 1, never underestimate your opponent. Absolutely. I almost lost an eye because I did that one time. So I got real cocky, and I was really, really good at dealing with drunk people. But one time, this guy came in there, and he wasn't drunk. He was just mad. And he was going to pick somebody up or whatever he was doing. But he wanted to get me attitude going out the door. And I'd gotten pretty good. I had a move set that kind of always worked on dealing with these people. That night, it didn't. And I did not have good track of where that guy's hands were. I did my one super move. I had a thing where I don't know if this would make sense articulating it, but if it was coming to fisticuffs, I would, if they were loading up a punch for me, I would lean my forehead in, eat the punch in my forehead, because that didn't hurt and it hurt them, and close the distance so I could get a headlock, and then I would roll to where I ended up falling with all my weight on them when we hit the ground. And then they were done. That's all it was, and they were done, and it was an easy victory, and it worked. It worked a lot. It didn't work this time, and I didn't have a next step. So the guy reached around and hooked his finger into my eye socket, and he got almost up to his second knuckle in, and all of a sudden I was seeing rainbows, and I was like a turtle on my back that didn't know what to do. Luckily, my guys were there, and they were able to get me out of the situation pretty quick. But he had stretched out my eyelids so much that I wasn't seeing right because my eyelid was all droopy over my eye. So I thought my eye was hanging, and I was going to have to push my eye back in. Luckily, that was not the case. My colleagues were making fun of me, saying I was crying, until they realized, oh no, that's blood. I was just bleeding from the eye socket. But I appreciate the lesson. I value the lesson. I only had to wear an eye patch for about a week, and I may do things wrong if I get into a conflict in the future, but I'm going to know where people's hands are. I'll tell you that. So yeah, don't underestimate people. You got to never take it for granted. Even if it's worked 100 times, it may not work 101 times. Number two, never start anything inside. Yeah, you always want to get them out the door as quick as possible. Especially, I mean, you can walk them to the front door, whatever, but if they look like it's going to get squirrely, get them out the closest door, and you can deal with it out in the parking lot. That is always good, and it minimizes their friends inside that you don't know they have coming at you, and it also makes it not a problem for everybody else, and you don't end up tackling, old ladies and random people that have nothing to do with it that get in the way. So that's always a solid policy, and be nice. That is always the best way to do things. I'll tell you this too. When I started, we were in fights every Friday and Saturday night, like 4 or 5 different physical altercations every single Friday and every single Saturday. By the time that I got out of there, I was almost never in a fight because I developed enough self-confidence and conflict resolution skills that it just usually didn't have to go there. And it wasn't by letting people take advantage, but it was by having a calmness of demeanor when you're dealing with folks, being comfortable enough to treat people nicely and to not escalate and get people all amped up. And yeah, if you can get that under control, you're able to accomplish a lot of stuff without it getting sketchy. So all 3 of those are solid. Alan, you were gazing down with some skepticism. Do you have commentary?
No, it's not skepticism. The dog needed his head scratched. So
fair enough.
No, I endorse everything you said.
All right, there you go. I have 3 questions. Troubled guest. I have 3 questions tonight. 1, are the gods personal? I see online all the time from folkish pagans that the gods don't care about us. They don't even notice us, and it's silly to think that we would be worth their time. What do you think about this mindset? I don't think those people are actually folkish pagans. I think that practicing devotional religion you would know that that's not true if you were an honest practitioner of that faith. I think those people are atheists that pretend because it's cool to have religion. And when I say that, I want to practice what I preached earlier, to extend them the maximum possible grace. Maybe they have not engaged with the gods yet in such a way that they would feel their presence. I promise you 1,000,000% the gods absolutely notice us. They absolutely do care about us, and they are personal and can and do interact with us. Is that equally distributed amongst all of people? Certainly not. Amongst all of our folk? Certainly not. Amongst any 2 folk? Certainly not, because we don't believe in equality. I have been blessed by that experience in my life. myriad people that I know and have been in bloat with have experienced that. It is foundational. It is 1,000,000% true. And if any of those people would like to open themselves up to that experience, I would invite them to attend one of our bloats, come to one of our hofs, and open themselves to that possibility. But in the most generous possible way to that question, no, those people are simply wrong and misguided. Alan, what are your thoughts?
Well, I agree with you absolutely, with the caveat that I don't think that Odin is going to intervene so that you get a parking place up close to the shopping center where you're going. I don't think Tyr is going to make the cop forget about the traffic citation that you have to pay. Those sorts of trivial matters are certainly outside the concern of our gods. I mean, if you want to, and I have said before on this format that that if you want those sorts of things addressed, you talk to the disseer, you talk to your ancestors. In the hierarchical viewpoint of things, you don't call the governor when your trash doesn't get picked up. So there is a hierarchy here too. So you address your major concerns to the gods and they hear you. You address your mundane concerns to your ancestors and they hear you.
So I want to throw in another couple of thoughts on this. I think it's a really important point. A lot of people, there was a time where most people came to Asatru from another faith. I think that now more often people come to Asatru from some form of atheism, from no faith. They recognize that they should have a faith and that religion, they're not ignorant to history and sociology and they know it's a thing, but they've never experienced it. So sometimes it sounds cooler amongst your friends, or it sounds more educated or whatever to rationalize the gods in some way that they're prime mover things that don't care, that are, existent as forces in the universe, but that you can't connect to because these people haven't experienced faith and they don't know what that's like. No, our gift cycle ties us in a particularly personal way. Now, there are greater forces of the universe that maybe care less than that. But the Aesir particularly have always had a worship relationship with our folk to where there's a gift cycle and a very personal interaction. Do they care about everybody? No, some people are probably foolish that they probably don't care about. I don't want to speak for who they do or who they don't. They've certainly often cared about kings and heroes. I think they care about a great many people, much of the time, about everybody. Again, there's no such thing as equality. But in those things, I think in our life, it's right that we should go for very minor things, to our ancestors, or major things, but to not overly pester the gods with minutia. I think it's probably annoying to ask for Thor to give you the answer to a math problem. I think that's ridiculous. I think it's probably comical at best and offensive at worst. But I think those things scale up too. I think that if you're a little kid and that's how you relate to the gods, is things that are big concerns to you because you're little and maybe aren't big concerns to the rest of us, I know that that's a thing. And maybe the response isn't, the heavens part and the gods descend and speak to the child at bedtime, but there's a comfort that's extended and there's an acknowledgement of a presence there in a lot of circumstances. So I would encourage those people to open themselves in their heart and in their mind and make offerings and see what happens. I can't guarantee you something will happen, but I guarantee you some things have happened by people following that advice, and hopefully that might happen in their case. Alan, what, if any, music do you listen to for devotional purposes?
I have a high-long channel on my Pandora that, and again, this is, especially with music, you gotta leave some of the stuff out. Like they always have a little political thing before they. In other words, I enjoy their music, even though they seem to be, they don't own the folkishness that they should. I'll say it that way. So High Lung is a great devotional thing and the associated things with that. I also have some yoga music. I'd have to look on my phone to remember the girl's name, but there's who does some mantra work, chanting with kind of some cool instrumentation. One of those, or I'll listen to some techno because it's typically non-lyrical, and I just think that because I can shape that thing, and in its own way, it is about elevation, and so I shape it to my own purpose. So that's the way I roll. Or some Sturgill Simpson if I'm driving in the car and need something to sing to.
So it's an interesting question, because I think it goes overtly to like worshipful hymns or meditative stuff, and that's not wrong. There are some different, again, I had it's been a while since I've done this, but I had a Pandora channel too. And I would fill it with sometimes stuff like that, but oftentimes different Icelandic singers. Sometimes, and I've done this a lot because of the cadence, also because of what it is, and because he's one of my heroes. But Sveinbjörn Bjørnson, and I don't know if it counts as music. It's kind of, I think it categorized maybe poetry. It's a metered recitation of stuff called Reamer, and it's him going through reading poems from the Eddas in a cadence. And if you guys haven't listened to it, Nick may be able to find you a link or something, because it's really cool. It's cool to hear the voice of one of our heroes, and also just the like cadence of it is really neat to listen to. And I'm excited because the more I learn of the Old Norse / Icelandic, the more like I pick up words and stuff, but also because it's a little bit removed from me having to focus on the lyrics. I hear the rise and fall of the cadence, and it's a nice thing to have in the background when I'm doing something like that. I've done different kind of yogic mantra things in the background too. I think there's certainly something to that, again, for that kind of providing atmosphere where that part of your senses are activated, but you don't have to focus on it a lot. But I think there's something else too when it is devotional for the point of expressiveness, or if it's devotional to an ancestor or someone. Trying to remember, singing music. Music will get me very weepy very quick. I am very emotional sometimes when I feel moved, and I will like weep, sing different stuff. If it's associated with an ancestor, with my mom or with my grandma or with my uncle, that kind of a thing connects differently. And again, it's a different kind of devotional music, but it evokes something really powerful. And if it's with an ancestor that you know, and that there's that connection through the song. That's really special. But that can also be, devotionally, if the song reminds you or connects you with one of the gods, or, I don't think if your heart's in the right place, I don't think there's terribly wrong answers. I think that, some gangster rap is probably not the best choice. There's less good choices, but I think there's a lot of right ways to do it. But those are the ones that, have been useful to me.
That the Reamer by Alcir Guzzi's Fanborn comes up like once a month, it feels like, in this shit by y'all. I ought to bookmark the dang link, but I can find it real easy. It's in the chat.
All right. Alan, Stormcloaks or Imperials?
I'm not sure what those are. So,
boo.
That's why I threw it to you, no context, just to see if you had the point of reference. Stormcloaks, because the Imperials are multi-culty and conspicuously brown at times. It's been a while since I joined with Ulfric. Yeah, I think Stormcloaks. I don't know any of our people that say Imperials over Stormcloaks, although there's cool things. But in that context, I don't think there's folks that do that.
And I'm apparently, I don't know that, whatever that is, I'm not familiar. I will say, though, like the older I get, the more I become, like the more Stormtrooper I get and less Rebel Alliance.
Okay, so in that dichotomy, yes, the Empire is the only way to go. But in this one, it's a Skyrim situation. I'm surprised at how enduring that is. That game's got to be 20 years old now.
15. It came out 11/11/11.
Yeah, it's an old game.
It's one of them newfangled video games, sir. A little bit after Pac-Man and the Atari.
Post Pong.
It's like in the interwebs or something.
There you go. The songs by the minstrels. I want to say the minstrel songs, but that's a different thing. But those get stuck in my head still to this day. Those are well done with the swarthy elves in the taverns. No, it's a fun game. Anyways, I believe I'm about your age, Matt. 42. You are 3 years my junior. I lift a couple times a week and do quite a bit of cardio. I'd say I'm in very good shape, but recently I've felt a little sluggish and it takes longer to get warmed up for exercise. I've not researched it, but a lot of guys start thinking about doing some sort of testosterone therapy / replacement stuff around this age. What are your guys' thoughts on it? I'm gonna let Alan go first on it, and I wanna wrap this up. Alan, what are your thoughts on this to this gentleman?
First, I think you look at diet. The more like diet nutrition research has exploded in the last dozen years, and they are really putting a fine point on a lot of things that we used to sort of have this vague belief that all you needed was calories, calories in, calories out, X amount of protein, everything good. But now we know that certain food combinations can make you feel sluggish, while the same foods in a different order of battle can make you attack the day. Sleep habits. You should never have a phone anywhere near your bedroom. No TV in the phone. No TV in the bedroom. Those sorts of things. If you're getting enough sleep and you're eating well, then that can do a lot of a lot of that lifting for you. See what I did there. The another thing, and I'm, at a certain point, you may consider replacement therapy. I'm not a doctor, so below a certain threshold, you may have to consider that. But I'm always hesitant to even to really give it serious consideration for people, because I think if you start, it's like a lot of other things. Like if you start replacing that, then your body is going to make less, because so you get into a thing where because your body has a feedback loop in it. And so like if your body is getting testosterone from outside, then the inside part starts making less. Again, that's the broad theory. I've looked at it a little bit. The one thing that I can say, and I'll say it in the politest way possible because I know we're in mixed company, but getting some sunshine on your testicles is a way to stimulate testosterone production. And if you're lifting, that goes a long way. I'm a couple of years past Matt's age, and I think I'm still doing okay. I mean, I can roll 100 sit-ups, so and I am still au natural.
The sunshine on the nuts. All right, so I will absolutely answer this question here in just a sec, but important news. Three things of import. Jarrett in Virginia donated $100 towards Melinda's Memorial Fund and $50 towards the pavilion. Thank you, Jarrett. That is awesome and much appreciated. Shannon in Georgia donated $10 to this broadcast and $10 towards the pavilion. Thank you, Shannon. And Jamie donated $1,000 to Melinda's Memorial Fund. With that, she will be cremated. She will have an urn. She will be transported to Odenshoff, and she will be interred with our loved ones at the Hoff of the Allfather in perpetuity. And that is tremendous. Thank you all so much, Jamie. Thank you for that amazing contribution. And thank you all. This is really a beautiful thing that Melinda gets what she wants. And anybody been following this saga, she did not leave a will, so we did not think that she would be able to get what she wanted. This is fantastic. Hail to the givers, hail the Iseer, and hail Melinda. With that, what I think is, I am unaware of the efficacy of sunlight on the testes. That one, we could put an asterisk by. I'm not endorsing that. Although it's probably not bad for you. There is value. Okay, you're going to assume whatever value from Alan and my suggestion here is, but I don't disagree with anything Alan said. But what I would like to say is this: get it tested. Go get your testosterone tested. See where it's at. Again, it's worth the caveat. I am not a doctor. This is not medical advice. This is just anecdotal opinion about your situation. Yeah, get it tested. You want to have your testosterone optimal for a man. That affects lots of stuff. Lots of things in our world around us make that less. So if it's a little bit askew, maybe you can bump it up with some dietary changes or with some things. If you are very low and it's not a thing that will be fixed by those things, absolutely get yourself some testosterone replacement therapy and get to where you're healthy. But do be aware, Alan is 1,000% right. If you are getting your testosterone externally, your testes will stop producing testosterone significantly. So If you can stay on the TRT forever, okay, that's definitely something to consider. You are in your 40s. I don't know if the lady in your life, if you have one, is younger or where you're at in your child producing years, but it will kill your ability to produce offspring unless you get off of it and get some other remedy to get your sperm count back up. So do be really aware of that before you start it. If you have had all the kids you're going to have, then I think it is a very viable thing to consider. Yeah, so I'm absolutely 1,000,000% open to you doing that, but get it checked. You don't know until you get it checked, and you can see where you're at. I think that we would all do well to try to optimize nutrition and other factors on bumping it up. And if you're close, I think that's a better way for you to go if you're close. But if you're not close and it's a severe problem, and one of the big ways that it does manifest, I think people very often think about it in terms of muscularity or in terms of things you would normally associate with testosterone. But the energy level thing is a very common precursor to, a precursor, not the right word, a common indicator of being low on testosterone. So get it checked out. You don't know until you know. Get your test levels checked and see where that's at. And there are more and more. So Alan mentioned that we're learning more and more about diet. We are. I mean, calories in, calorie out. That's true. But there's more to the story. Then we moved into getting your protein intake right. And that's also true. But now we learn there's more to the story. So there's always ways to enhance that and kind of tweak that. Do those things. But yeah, get it checked out, talk to your doctor, and what I would say is don't let anything that people on the internet who virtue signal and purity spiral about get you in your head about it. If it is a medical thing that you need to do to make yourself have a good life and be optimized, go ahead and do it. But do check it out and talk to your doctor and get it figured out, and know that if you do, you're not going to produce on your own, and that there may be other things you want to try first to see if that does bump it and move it the right direction, like diet, like timing different things. Again, it all depends on kind of where you're at, but your doctor will be able to tell that a little bit better when you get it checked.
While we're on the topic, while you're talking, remind me of two more things about diet. Number one, none of us should ever, after all the things I've read, I'm never going to go anywhere near a fast food restaurant again. That stuff is horrible for you. The chemicals they use to treat things with, the processing that they use for it is bad for you. It's bad for your testosterone and every other part of your system. And also, organic food. One of the many reasons that people in the United States are suffering from low testosterone in general is that pesticides that are put on food are deliberately targeted toward the reproductive system of insects. And, people are not insects. Folkish people are not insects, but the in the big set of things, read about atrazine and how nasty it is, and how, to quote my buddy Alex Jones, they're turning the frogs gay. So, and yeah, I know it's more expensive. Eat less, eat more expensive food. It's worth it.
It is, in fact, turning frogs gay. And it's been really nice in the last few years. Now mainstream people have to admit, no, I know it sounds funny, but he was right. It's turning the frogs gay, because it is. Me and Alan have this push-pull on some chemicals and some stuff, but I don't agree with them on energy drinks. Think they're good for you. There's a lot of stuff I can do, but I can't advocate for fast food other than it's tasty and fun sometimes. But even then, I find that I think it's going to be this tasty treat. It's going to be awesome. It's really not. It's not that satisfying. It's not that great. There's some items here and there, but though I want to jump on as the counterpoint, I can't on the fast food. It's not good for you. It's just not. Alan, where does monotheism come from, and why does their doctrine seem to hate us as polytheists?
Well, the conclusion that I reached on that question, I will say it's not universally held, but it is bolstered by a lot of research and by a lot of the writings of a lot of people smarter than I am. But monotheism originates from the encounter between Abraham, Isaac, and the demiurge. Demiurge is the false god of this world, the false god of materialism. And he made a pact with Abraham and said that if you do exactly as I say, then I will put your people in charge of this world. And from that encounter and what flowed after that, came the faith of the Hebrews, the Jews. Out of that came Christianity. And then as a side branch or somewhere along in there came Islam. And those three together are called the Abrahamic faiths and are referred to in that way, just as, as the blanket term for those three faiths, because those are the ones who are strict monotheists. In fact, Muslims believe that Christians are pagans because they believe in three gods, the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. And so they're not really monotheists. They are idolaters because they believe that the one is divided into three. Why do they hate us? Because their books tell them to hate us, because we do not follow the Judaic stricture that says that you will have no other God before me. And oddly, if even to say that, to have that written in there admits of the existence of other gods. So to think that there is only one God, but you can't worship other gods, it disproves itself, in my opinion. The one of the many disproofs of that theological error, I recommend over and over, and have bought and given away and put in auction and recommended. There's a book by an acquaintance of mine, Acharya G, wrote the book, published a book that you can still get on Amazon. It's called The Dharma Manifesto. The Dharma Manifesto. And the Dharma is the naturally arising organic faith of any given people. Like the Dharmic faith of the Japanese people is Shinto. The Dharmic faith of the Indian people, and I realize this overgeneralizes, but the Vedic faith, Hinduism, the Dharmic faith of the European peoples is Asatru. The Abrahamic faiths are at war with us because their book tells them that we are in scriptural error, which we are, according to them. And that's why they hate us, because we refuse to believe in their God in a meaningful way. Believe may not be the right word there, but we've And I also think that there is a phenomenon going on that is the thing of like the emperor's new clothes. Like everybody knows that Christianity is the real religion, and we will kill you until you stop not believing that. And I think that I think it dovetails with the woke ideology that's out there. People scream it from the top of their lungs because they don't want people to see that they don't really believe it. That's why I think they hate us, because they expect that they should hate us. Really, we have opened the door so that they can rejoin us and rejoin the faith of their ancestors, and that's part of the cognitive dissonance, I think, that also in modern ideal makes it more difficult for them to get there, because they know that Christianity is an empty shell. They know that we are right in our history. They know we are right in our tradition. They know we are right in the gods that we worship, and that we are right to venerate our ancestors, their ancestors. And that's why I think it certainly is an aspect of hatred, but I think there's also a degree of resentment. Like, we're brave enough to get out here on the tip of the spear and do what should be done, and they're not. But that's on them. They're welcome to join us. Sorry that was so long. I get animated about that question.
No, that's fine. I think it's important to note that, well, and Alan covered this a little bit. In the dawn of monotheism, and if you genuinely study it, the proposition isn't that there's only one God. It's that you're only allowed to worship that one God. Even in their original text, it's acknowledged that that monotheistic God, that Yahweh is one of many gods. In ancient Levantine religion, he is one of many gods. He gains some degree of prominence, and in the Bible, you are not allowed to have any other gods before him. He is described throughout those holy texts of the monotheists as a jealous God. And you find that there is this hyper obsession with needing all possible adulation, all possible worship, all possible praise, to the point that it is sinful to celebrate any of his mortal followers, because you're supposed to just give him all of the credit for all of the things all of the time, because celebrating, a guy doing something good is idolatrous, and like he can't stand even that small degree of credit going to somewhere that's not his. And I think that speaks to a really gross pathology.
Just a bit real quick about my thought is, every Christian I've ever met, whether the book says it or not, they believe that their God is the only God that exists. They completely discount the existence of other gods. So,
and that's
what they believe. That's their religion. That would be even more more monotheistic? I don't know.
Well, so yeah, it's evolved and it becomes simplified, and you find the very early texts, and the more you study the history of the region, telling you that there's other gods. You find those few references, like in Genesis and in Exodus, and the very early books of the Bible mention plurality of gods. And then from then on, that's the one God, and all the other gods are just demons or whatever. One of the features of that particular entity is a demand for all of their people to persecute anyone who is of a different faith and to, ethnically cleanse the people who are not in alignment with that one particular deity. And it's really interesting because, and I can't speak to every possible world religion, but in my understanding, that is very much not the norm. That's not how it works in all the other, all religion tends to be ethnically based in the history of mankind. But we have an anomalous religion of Abrahamism that takes its, three heads of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam that all venerate this very different spiritual force that very much demands he's the only good thing and everything else is bad in a really destructive way. I think it is a part of a very negative chaos pathology that is debasing to humanity and that is genuinely evil. And I don't think that every Jew or every Christian or every Muslim is necessarily some horrible person, but I think that ideology and that particular spiritual entity is not a good thing. And that's why I'm where I'm at. Many of us come from Christianity or another faith, and it dawned upon me that that person, that spiritual being, was evil, and I did not want to be a part of that. And I think that that's kind of a fundamental teaching. But, where did it come from? I think it came almost specifically, and there's later schools of Hinduism that kind of logically end up in a form of monotheism. I think that's a later development in Hinduism. I don't think that's the most ancient Vedic practice of it. But that kind of monotheism, I think you see specifically from the Hebrews in the Levant towards Yahweh. And that is bent on destruction of all other people's faiths. And that is baked in as one of the most fundamental tenets of that existence. And that's bad, and it's polar opposite to what we believe.
And not to completely discount, because at least my understanding of it is monotheistic, but Zoroastrianism as well. But that wouldn't be lumped in so much with the ones that are out there attacking the pagans.
No, it's funny because it kind of became that in duality, but only sort of. It evolved out of a Hinduism to where it recognized the existence of other gods. It classifies them as somehow less than Ahura Mazda, but it recognizes their existence and almost casts them in what you would equate to angels or demons. And I don't think that's fair to put on it, but it's kind of the thing people might recognize. But again, that's a development of something much earlier that wasn't there. So I do wonder about that a little bit, but it is fair to put that out there. All right. This one is a extremely long, multiple part question. Hello, I am not too late for this, or if I'm not too late for this to be asked on the stream with the Lawspeaker today, please raise the question. If I am too late, maybe next time. First, a kind of PSA for any listeners in the Las Vegas area who are not members to become members. Yeah, if you're in Las Vegas, you should join the AFA if you are eligible. If you are not in Las Vegas, you should join the AFA if you're eligible. Sorry, the way I copied and pasted this is my fault. Second, I have recently come across a few examples of court cases regarding religious provisions in estate planning, stating that inheritors of an estate must belong to a specific religion, and being upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court in contrast to other discrimination laws. These have primarily been from Jewish Americans stipulating their grandchildren must be married to ethnic Jews and or Jewish converts, but hypothetically extends to any religious affiliation. The most recent of these cases was a state of Feinberg in 2009, but there are examples going back to at least the 1970s. I have also read about Catholics and Mormons indicating that their heirs must have official letters of good standing issued from their respective churches in order to receive inheritance. I'm curious if we, as Asatru and AFA members in particular, can replicate this. Would requiring that one's grandkids need a letter of good standing from the AFA be a legal way of excluding non-folkish descendants from receiving inheritance against the will of the deceased? I feel this may also bolster the AFA's legitimacy as well. I'm working on defining a beneficiary class in a dynastic trust using these parameters and may reach out to the Lawspeaker personally as a client if appropriate. Thanks. I will defer to the Lawspeaker on his legal expertise in this matter.
I've never heard of that. But AI tells me that that is a thing. It was not the United States Supreme Court, but the Illinois Supreme Court that upheld a clause in a will whereby the takers under a will were disinherited because they were no longer practicing Jews. That's like the 30-second summary that I was able to glean while Matt was reading the question. So a couple things. Probate law is not my specialty. I've done some work in the area, though, and I can tell you that courts go a long way toward enacting the will, the final wishes of the testator. So it doesn't surprise me that this clause was enacted. I do think that it's a great idea, as this questioner says, that we should, first of all, we should rate. So I'm gonna go in the right order. Yes, I think it's absolutely a good idea that those of us who have more than a couple dollars should put in there that terms in the wills that favor those children who follow our faith. Absolutely, good idea. Secondly, I think it is part of the hangover of cultural Marxism to say that we have to let our kids decide for themselves what they are. Now, to a certain extent, I'm glad that I came of age in that era because it allowed me to find Asatru. But you should raise your kids as Asatru. And I am absolutely willing to email with this person and help figure out a way to help people put clauses in their wills to favor those of our faith. Absolutely. Good idea.
So I'm a broken record on this, but I will be until Alan starts to be overburdened with wills that he's got to keep track of. All right, so we're going to use Melinda as an example here. Disregard that we've just got this figured out to where it is in fact a success story. But it was imperiled for a second. She had an illness that she knew was terminal. And she had a very clear idea of what she wanted for her remains and for how she wanted that to go. But she didn't articulate it to anybody until very, very close before she passed. Steve and Sheila went out to visit her in her last days. And she made clear what she wanted, but she didn't make a will. She didn't get it done. Without that, we don't have the standing to advocate for her best interests of what she wanted. She had kin that, that was not a very close situation. That was not really factored into the situation. And so when the time came, the mortuary people or whoever deals with that took possession of her remains, and her assets or whatever got figured out with her remaining next of kin. And we thought we'd lost that opportunity, and she was going to go with whatever, distant kinfolk that weren't particularly close were going to, do to the best of their discretion. And that's really unfortunate when we know what someone wants. We just can't do anything about it. Fortunately, in this case, it worked out. Her kin reached out for help with funeral expenses, and we were able to say, hey, we talked to her and this is what she wanted. We'd love to help with that, but can we give her this that she asked for? And they were willing to let us do that, which is amazing. And your guys' generosity made that happen. So thank you all. But I've seen this happen with so many of our people where they don't get what they want. Very specifically, former member, not former member, a member who passed didn't get this figured out. His parents did not support, they were his next of kin, didn't support his religious choices. They were completely white people, but they had converted to Judaism. He was aligned in such a way religiously, politically, and worldview-wise to where that was very incongruent with what he would want. His remains now and, for the foreseeable future will be in a Jewish cemetery with Hebrew writing on the headstone or however they do it, because he didn't have a will in place that said otherwise. And it's hard because I know that's not what he wanted. Get your will done. As you see on the screen, or if you don't, doyourownwill.com. By all means, get your will done however you want. Go to a lawyer, get it done whatever way you need to get it done. But this is a very simple way. It is a free way. Get it done. Get original copies of it, signed and notarized, and send one of those copies to our Lawspeaker. He will do what is within his power and what he can to advocate for your best interest upon our notification that you have passed. I hope none of you pass, ever. But I think it's very likely that all of us will at some point. It's a very simple thing to do, but it means a lot. It makes a real big impact on those you leave behind, on how you're remembered, and on what happens with your remains. And it's a very easy thing to do. I was able to do mine in like 10 minutes. Getting a notary is a little bit more of a pain in the butt, but not a big deal, not a difficult thing. And you put it in the mail. It's not hard. Get it done. Let's make it happen. I want what's best for you, and this is the only way I know how to help you with that.
And if you don't know, go to your bank. They almost all have notaries and are going to, if you're a member of the bank, probably not even charge anything or just a few bucks. If not, the UPS store, maybe even a Staples, these places have notaries. You can always Google it too.
Also, I don't know if I mentioned it, Stephen in Japan donated $15 towards helping out Melinda. We appreciate it, Stephen. Thank you very much. So, Alan, do you have any parting thoughts for the folk about community or anything else for that matter?
Asatru is the practice of the native indigenous approach to the eternal. I think it is self-evident that our culture has built the most desirable approach to living in the world, and that by being honest and steadfast members of the community would be enriching to your life and to the lives of all the people that you come in contact with. If you haven't been to a Hoff, what are you waiting for?
Yeah, I'll just say if it's the only choice you got, if you're locked up in some kind of a shipping container somewhere, if you are on a desert island somewhere, if you are, floating adrift in space, then, if you're a solitary practitioner, that is much better than nothing. But you're not getting the value out of this. You're not getting the enrichment of being part of a community. Opening yourself up to others is scary for some of us. It is well worth it. To anybody that is scared to give it a shot or to get out of their comfort zone or check it out, I think we've all been there. First Asatru event I ever went to, I showed up and it was at a park, and it was a park that was surrounded by forest. I snuck around in the trees trying to get an eye on who these people were and what we're up to, because you don't know what you're going to see, you don't know what you're going to encounter. We do the best we can to show you guys groups of happy folks that are normal, good, good-hearted, positive white men and women worshiping their gods. We would invite you to join us and be part of things. It's such a game changer, and you owe it to yourself to take that opportunity to, to make that effort, getting outside of your comfort zone. The biggest thing I say all the time, and I don't do this to trivialize, we've all had to make this journey. The hardest step is that first distance from your couch to the door. It's all downhill. It's all easy after that. But getting that, mustering up the courage to get out of where you're comfortable, to decide today is the day, to drive however long it might be. You show up and say, hi, my name's so-and-so. I'm with the AFA. Glad to meet you. It can change your life in the most wonderful ways. And I would encourage everybody to take that opportunity. Alan, thank you for joining us tonight and sharing your wisdom.
I apologize for my tardiness. I will be on time next time. I got my bond right, boss.
There we go. It happens. Nick, thank you for all that you do. We appreciate you. Folks out here who donated tonight, thank you guys very much. You guys brought it over the line. Melinda is getting what she wanted, and you guys are a big part of that. So thank you for it. Everybody, start making plans now to go to your Hoff for Freyfaxy coming up on the 15th of August. I'm looking for, I will not talk to you next week. Specular Trent East will be here to do his program. He has taken over for Brandy for a while to do the when we find ourselves with a 5th Wednesday in a month. So he's going to bring you a fantastic show with amazing tales of daring do and whatnot. So that's going to be awesome. Make sure you tune in for that. Until I see you again 2 Wednesdays from now, hail the Iseer, hail the folk, hail the AFA, and remember, victory never sleeps.
Never sleeps.